like to welcome everybody to the latest episode of Inside the Doctor's Lounge, a place where we can all come together, have some fun, have some serious discussion. But the bottom line is it's always honest and it's always unfiltered. We never know where the discussion is going to take us. Just like inside a real doctor's lounge, you never know what's really going on behind that door. So with us today, as always, the founder and CEO of MD Coaches, Rhonda Crow, my colleagues, Dr. Rick Solinger and Dr. Randy Cook, who's also the host of Prescription for Success is Awesome podcast. And with us today is our special guest, Dr. Courtney Chambers. And Dr. Chambers has not only an impressive background, but he's got some stories to tell. And that's why we have him here today, because we figured he'd fit right into this discussion. And we're sitting here talking about how casually we are all sort of dressed and how far we've evolved in our wardrobes over the years. But it's interesting because here we are having a discussion by way of Zoom, and one of the silver linings of the whole COVID pandemic has been the pushing to the front of the line, the importance of telemedicine. And so here we are. All of us are in a different stage of our career too. And, I wanted to talk a little bit about telemedicine today and how it's impacting not only medicine, the future of it, why it hasn't been here sooner, and also how, looking at this crew here, how our career paths may still involve telemedicine. And so with that, Courtney, I just, again, welcome. I alluded to your background. If you'd like to spend a minute talking about your latest endeavor, and then we can talk about some of your background, as a trauma surgeon, the fact that you were a Doogie Howser and you went off and started med school at a very early age, a young age, while the rest of us were acting like immature idiots, I'm sure, at the age that you were entering medical school. I'll speak for myself on that one. But anyway.
Yeah, Rick got quiet.
Yeah, I just love your story and the fact that, here you are now, your career path is taking you all over the country, literally, and from humble roots down to Jamaica. But now here you are, all of us sitting here, we're no longer physically practicing medicine, even though we were all trained in surgery and we've all done countless cases. And so why I'm weaving this telemedicine idea, I just kind of want to have you tell our audience a little bit about what you're up to right now.
Yeah, so thanks for the invite and thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to, as we say, knock heads with like minds. And here I am. I'm actually sitting in my home office, aka the extended apartment room. And I'm currently sitting in front of three computer screens. The one you see me on now, and the other two I refer to as my day job. And my day job has been ongoing since late last year. And it involves not so much telemedicine as much as maybe telehealth care administration, if you will. I'm not practicing behind or in front of the computer screens, but I'm in the field, and we're doing utilization review and management, some data analytics, as well as some educational outreaches to fellow physicians who are actually on the front lines, and getting them up to speed on some of the Medicare rules and regs as it pertains to, I guess, the business of medicine, the business side of medicine, and taking care of the patients and so forth.
I thought it was interesting. Unfortunately, you had some health issues, requiring back surgery, and that sort of pushed you into, I'd say, really kind of led you in one sense to your current position. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to throw this out to my colleagues too. I just want to ask you too. First of all, I seriously doubt that when you were training and going through all those countless hours and procedures that you were doing, that you would imagine yourself at this stage of your life being where you are now. But life takes us through a journey that has unanticipated twists and turns. But so let me ask you, what do you miss clinical practice? And this is for you guys too. I mean, and if you do, what part of clinical practice do you miss the most? Because I want to throw in my 2 cents on this, but I want to hear what you all have to say.
So yeah, after my own back operation, it's been non-clinical since then, recovery, rehab, and now my sort of second phase or this phase of my career. And I think I miss the actual patient interaction. I still remember vividly a lot of those. And even so, the patients' families. I'll tell a quick story. I was in Connecticut practicing. It was the usual teenager came in with acute appendicitis, did the lap appy. He bounced out of the recovery room to the floor and could have gone home the same day, but stayed overnight. And I ran into the parents of that patient a few months later. And they were telling me the story of how, I had changed his life. And I went, whoa, okay, I took out his appendix, but, that's pretty much all I did. And they said, no, they said, he just really used that as a springboard. And he was excelling in school and baseball. And they said, we'd never seen any kid be so happy to have appendicitis. And he had really enjoyed sort of the interaction. I was kind of coaching him through being sick and coaching him through surgery. And for some reason, it just really resonated with him that he could go on and just sort of conquer the world. And those kinds of stories, I think, resonate with me in terms of an interaction, a chance interaction, and just having somebody just sort of fly into the rest of their life. And boy, I have a few of those, to be honest.
Wow, you know what strikes me about that story, Courtney, is the fact that it was a chance encounter.
Yes.
That you saw his parents and had that exchange where they had the opportunity to share that with you. Elsewise, if that hadn't happened, you may not have heard what impact your interaction had. But to take that just a little further, I think it's something to keep in mind, especially on those worst days when things aren't going as great as they should be, that there are untold or unseen ripple effects that your interactions have had that have had a benefit. And that should buoy us as we move forward through those challenging times. So thanks for sharing that story.
That's
what struck
story.
me.
I read something just this week where they were talking about 90% of physicians don't recommend, medicine to their kids. And yet 75% of people still place physicians at the top of the respect line in terms of a profession and what they think about it. And one of the things they said that physicians, my personal side story is that when I first quit operating heart surgery, and somebody said to me, and I was probably burnt out at that time, and somebody said to me, well, why would you give up all those skills? Do you not know, how much you're helping people, how much people appreciate you? And I would say after that fact, from that point on, I would listen and I would see people. Oh yeah, you took care of my mother and she loved you to death. And, we've never forgotten you. And it was from 15 years prior. And I'm going, oh, so you didn't realize the effect you could have on somebody that way. Maybe your minister at church can have that effect too, but a physician, I don't think we take how much of a personal relationship we have with our patients to heart. We go on and go to the next room. That patient, appendicitis, goes home. Great, he did well and he went home, and we're all thinking about the results instead of the person that we just took care of, So that I think that's a great point Courtney makes about.
But it's the example that you set in that interaction too, especially with a young person. You know, that's a form of coaching or mentoring right there too.
Right.
And it was just, it's kind of like leading by example as well. There's so many things that work going on there. And Rick, your point, you know, it's making me think too, you know, as we talk about coaching too, so many times and the burnout thing, you know, we are, like you say, we're so focused on our tasks at hand. And sometimes just getting that little pat on the back that maybe if somebody would have said to you, you know, Dr. Zollander, thank you. And it means the world to you too. And it makes you feel like you're not out there by yourself. Because sometimes we all feel like that. We feel like we're beating our head against the wall, or you've got all these other things that, all these variables in the equation that we're trying to address. And we never really, we put everybody ahead of ourselves so often.
Well,
So to get a little feedback like that, it's like, yeah, thank you. I'm trying to make this world a better place. And that means more than anything.
Yeah, and that's what drove us all into this. I mean, we all enjoy
Exactly.
that. And what's driven us away in the last 20 years of the 21st century is an example of what Courtney's having to coach guys through the business of telemedicine and practicing and stuff. And, you know, when we were all starting out, that was like, that's over there. I don't care about that. Just show me where I go now. I mean, and now that's a big part of your brain power spent every day is how do I deal with insurance? How do I deal with the office? Am I employed by the hospital? Am I this? Am I that? And I think that's what's driven us away. And the young people still come to medicine and then they get into it. What we're all finding out, we talk about coaching, the young people come into it and then all of a sudden they're going, this isn't what I bought in for. You know, I didn't buy into this. I want to just take care of people and help people. So I think they're hitting a wall earlier than we all did because they feel like they're being like, whoa.
It wears you down. I mean, I always say, you know, growing up in the New York City area myself, I say, you know, even the toughest New Yorker gets worn down by it over time. And, you know, you think you're tough and you think you can handle stuff, but, you know, it's still, we're all people and we all need the same things too. And you can put it up for so long. You stay in that fight or flight, you know, kind of mindset for a while, but eventually it does wear you down. So that's why, you know, being there for each other too is so important. I think it just, you know, we can all benefit from, you know, just a little positive feedback once in a while too.
You know, Des, I'll add a little something here that I think is kind of interesting. I find that I'm a little distressed by the number of young physicians that early in their careers, they just want to get out of it. They want to do something else. They want to be an entrepreneur and start another business or sell makeup or whatever. They know something's missing, but they don't quite know how to put their finger on it. And I think that's exactly what Rick was just talking about. I had the same experience. I practiced for 44 years, and after I had gotten to about year 30, I was beginning to be physically exhausted because the system was putting more demands on me, and I had to think about, you know, how much longer could I do this? And that's when I made the transition into wound care and hyperbaric medicine. And I thought, oh, am I really making a terrible mistake? I can't imagine life without the operating room. Of course, chronic wound care turned out to be every bit as rewarding. And the reason for that is because of that connection that you make with the patients. And the very last patient that I saw sort of brought that home for me because, you know, we were talking about what I was going to do. I've actually got a website set up that has nothing on it that's intended to be a blog site that I called No Greater Privilege. I got the title from the title of a book written by a famous internist in our area here. His name was Jack Kirshenfeld. He's just a big name around Montgomery, Alabama. Been deceased for a very long time. And when I told her that, she said, "Did you know that I was his office nurse?"
Oh, wow.
The circle, man. I mean,
Yeah.
7 degrees. I was going to say, quick story. I had a patient, and I have a son in a wheelchair and with spina bifida. Well, I had a patient who had similar thing, but he was in his 50s. And I took care, he was one of the last patients I saw, and I took care of him and the reason he appreciated it was I took care of him the same way I took care of my own son.
Mm.
And when I left, he was one of the last patients I saw, and he hugged me and had tears.
Yeah.
Guys, it hits me like that type of thing, Rick, and Randy just saying, the number of years you were in practice. I look at myself, I think I was a much better doctor at age 50 than I was in my 30s,
No doubt
without
about
question.
that. Yeah.
So here's the point I'm going to make. Isn't it frustrating, or do you ever feel frustrating? It's like you're finally at the top of your game. You have all this knowledge, and you can have so much to share. And then your body either starts wearing down or something else happens, and you find yourself, you're not in practice anymore. And that's where I see telemedicine or telehealth could be like a second life for a number of us who maybe we're not physically able to do the clinical work or be in the OR all the time like we were. That doesn't mean we can't have an influence or some type of interaction with our patients, which I think that is probably, if we polled ourselves, that's the one thing that we miss the most.
That was.
I love being with my patients. I just love that part of it, that you are blessed every day, no matter how hard or how easy it is.
I guess if I learned anything about the evolution, it was exactly that. And that is the patients are so grateful for what you do, regardless of what it is. And the tragedy, I think, for the younger physicians, and Courtney, I'm interested to know how you feel about this, is that the systematic overreach of corporate care and healthcare systems running everybody and defining their job description and being tied to the electronic medical record gets in the way of that connection. And I think that's what causes the young people to be disenchanted very early on.
I'll agree with everything said so far and echo that. Rick, it's heartwarming to see you still react the way you did to that story and that experience. And I think, for anyone who has never done what we all have done, they just won't know, they just won't know. I hope someone watches that and feels some of what we've all felt as we've gone through to this point in our careers. A very good point and question, I think. It's demanding. The world, I think, has become more demanding. And so our medical specialties have also followed suit. I've watched textbooks, and we've all been there. Some of you have written where it used to be one volume and it's two and growing, right? And so you've needed to master more information as time marches on. The journals are spitting out volumes and volumes and article after article. And to be at the top of your game, you've got to know that stuff, or at least some of it. And in terms of corporate, when you move away now from the bedside, I'm going to say 3 letters, and those of you who've experienced them might cringe. We used to do this with jokes, and we used to say, okay, I'm going to say one word, I'm going to watch half of you cringe. And the word was tequila, right? and I saw a comedian do it, and literally the entire crowd just moaned. And I guarantee you, if we did this in front of a live audience of physicians who have been through and are going through practice, and we said these 3 letters, they would moan. And the letters are RVU.
Yep.
You got me.
Right? And so, right? It's not a matter of, like you said, you go through training, you go through your first few years, you get to that sweet spot where you literally feel like you can take on and manage just about any patient, any disease process. But then you get into the way you get paid, the way you get reimbursed. And for me, I'll give you my example. Initially, I started out as a solo practitioner, sort of hitching a ride with an orthopod and a neurosurgeon to share expenses so I could practice. And I did a whole bunch of work and spent quite a few years doing that. But after that, it was always either contracted with or employed by a larger entity. And they your feet are held to the fire. I remember vividly not too long ago, the meetings when we'd all sit in the room and they were putting up slides of how many RVUs I was short of the goal. And the other doc had surpassed their goal and were scaling. And so, now you get to a point where it's, you have to outperform some weird mean or median or something to feel like you're worth anything. Otherwise, you feel like you're worthless. You're taking from the system, and boy, that's rough.
Well, the problem is, the worth of each relative value unit is assigned by a committee of people who could not, even if they would try, assign a value to exactly what we're talking about, and that is the personal connection with the patient.
Right.
You can't value that, but if you force everybody to be thinking about a measurable value, that other stuff's going to get lost, and everybody loses in that scenario, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, I think they ought to change the relative. The R should not stand for relative. It should stand for resentment.
That's a great idea.
And they ought to change
write a blog on that.
They ought to change the V to an F as well. Make it RFUs. That's pretty much. Just saying.
Now that's something we can run with right there.
Yeah.
We've all seen it. I mean, one of my good friends is an orthopedic surgeon. This guy's like a phenomenal orthopedic surgeon. I don't want to give too much of his background, but high-powered professional sports ortho guy. They wined him down and brought him to Jacksonville. Was in our hospital. Everything's great. He's given the task of creating an outstanding orthopedic department in our hospital. And after about a year and a half, all of a sudden you see the grumbling starting because his RVUs are not up to where they need to be. His productivity, it's like, productivity? Are you guys serious? Do you understand? It's so mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And you guys are right. This is kind of the push where it's, people become disenchanted. Mm-hmm. and just they start questioning, why am I doing this? Yeah. I mean, I'm not just some little cog in a machine here, but I guess apparently I am. I'm a commodity. I'm no longer a surgeon.
I think if the people who were assigning the value would pay close attention, they would understand that those people that really do make a significant connection with their patients have got the fullest waiting rooms. Right?
Exactly.
Everybody wants to get in there.
Isn't it? Think about it too. All the, patient satisfaction surveys. And I mean, in my hospital, they brought the people from Disney in to do try and create a positive attitude or atmosphere. But at the bottom line, well, why don't you just let us do our jobs? Let us be good doctors and treat our patients well. How about that?
I don't know. I'm trying to see you in Mickey ears myself.
Oh my God. Do you believe that? But their point was, be in the service industry and there's parallels but it's like the bottom line, can we just go back to basics of the doctor-patient relationship where we are there for them. We're treating our patients like we want to be treated ourselves. And we're an extension of the golden rule in a sense. That's why we took our oath. I mean, that's a part of it. We're problem solvers. We're here to be of service. Again, the service word comes up.
Mhm.
Hey, Courtney,
Yes,
I want to make a segue. So doing what you're doing now,
yes.
what do you think the positive things that where and service oriented that you can get from telemedicine? Where do you think telemedicine's strengths are? Is it skilled nursing homes? Is it outpatient pediatrics? Where would you see the best use of it?
And now remembering that I'm not actually practicing
No, I know.
telemedicine.
I'm
Yes.
just
I think access would be sort of the major word,
okay.
place of impact. I can almost imagine these remote areas where, either physicians don't or can't or don't want to go to, and or where the patients can't come from to go to the big house. And you and I, we've all read and heard these stories about these critical access hospitals having to close because of funding and or financial woes.
Mhm.
And then you say, well, but they can just go to the bigger hospital, the up the road or down the road. You know what? They can't. They can't get there. And they may have a lesion, they may have a rash, they may have cellulitis, they may have a big bad foot, diabetic foot infection. And all they need is someone to look at it, to make a diagnosis. And they can't get that.
Yep.
So I can almost visualize telemedicine being sort of the arm reaching out into these areas, into these populations, and providing access to knowledgeable physicians who not necessarily running around like we all did, trying to see and treat patients. We're centralized, and the access is far reaching.
That succinctly puts it in one word. That's
Yeah.
a pretty good way of saying it.
I think that's probably likely to be the biggest value that telemedicine can possibly offer, and that is those people that are a long way have got to make a decision about whether they gas up the car and drive 2.5, 3 hours to a place that has a full service hospital, or whether they're just going to sit and wait and see what happens next.
Right.
And if they can just get some really good advice, well-informed advice about whether this can wait or whether it's not, is just incredibly important. And for me, I think that's probably the biggest value that telemedicine is going to offer.
Yeah, it's that access to care. Randy, you just touched on it. You made me think of a story. Years ago, I was doing a presentation to a nurses group up in South Dakota, but it was a regional meeting. And so they had nurses from Montana, Wyoming. And one of the nurses was telling me that she would drive 6 hours to see one patient.
Mhm.
And this was a wound care conference. And so to me, telemedicine, where I see the value, and it's interesting, being in Jacksonville, which is a metropolitan area, but yet we have a lot of, such a big spread out area that it's physically difficult for a lot of people to get
You got
into the
South
wound
Georgia.
center. And
Mhm.
so
You
that
got
access to
people-
care, and it's all more, I think it's also a more efficient way to work too. Again, what I was referring to earlier, here we all have our breadth of knowledge, and to be able to sit at a computer or to have that ability to review more patients in a short amount of time without physically having to leave your office is really a godsend. And it could prevent so many things. Like Randy said, people, okay, well, I can't make it, so I'm just going to sit on this thing and maybe it'll get better. Which, invariably, it doesn't get better.
All
Nothing
three of
magical
us
happens.
have seen the diabetic foot that just sat around for 2-3 weeks, and it's too late by then.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it's, I just, as I'm hearing myself talk today too, I'm just thinking, again, this point of you've got all this experience, and now we're not ready to retire. None of us. We still have a lot to offer,
Right.
whether it's through mentoring, whether it's through patient interaction and care. And you can't discount that. To me, it's frustrating. And it's not only in medicine too. You look at some brilliant minds out there. They're constantly learning. They're solving problems. They've accumulated so much knowledge. Always trying to be the better version of yourself.
Yes.
You finally get there, and then it's like, whoops, it looks like we're at the end of the road here.
I was
And
watching. I was watching a thing today about when this killed Kodak. Think about it. The vision of that man to kill Kodak. He said, "Oh, I've got this little camera up here, and that's going to do it." And I think also in telemedicine, the cool part will be the technology, because, you know, the things about the Apple Watch, but, you know, the little things you see advertised wear on your diabetics wear, and you have continuous monitoring. The doctor could be 1,000 miles away and see what your sugar curve is.
That's right. Congestive heart failure, another one. It's limitless, really, as technology continues to move forward.
Yeah, I just don't want to get to having the chip in my ear like my dog. Then that's too much George Orwellian or whatever his name was.
I was going to think of something else like your dog too, but we're going to let that alone.
Yeah.
And it had nothing to do with the addition of something into your body, but anyway.
I'll have to go back and ask Dr. Fooling You back there.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Oh man. You know, it's I guess you know, it's interesting. I find it that, you know, Courtney, you know, with your trauma background, all your surgical experience, that you also found yourself kind of being led into the wound care world. And I always say, you know, wound care finds us, and all of us have had some role in the wound care world. But I just, I see, you know, where you're going to, and I see that you are hardly done. And you know, so maybe I would just love to put our heads together a little bit at some point too, and just kind of, you guys have all brought so much to that community and to our patients. And so, you know, you're still highly relevant and have a lot of information and a lot of experience to offer. And so, you know, that team approach, but utilizing telemedicine and especially in wound care, I think it's invaluable. We're on to something with this, and I think people are still trying to figure it out right now too. But it's a brave new world as far as that goes too.
I'm pretty sure I got a text or two from a recruiter or two about a tele wound care type position. Not I think it was either the beginning or the mid heavy COVID crisis. And I'm not sure what happened to it, but I'm not sure if you folks saw that or
I get them all the time.
Yeah, there's been a couple, you know, from private, from industry, I should say, and then there's also a company that has created a telewound coalition, I guess.
Yeah.
I think it's Dr. Bartlett's behind that. Bob Bartlett.
Yeah.
He's now with Swift Medical. That's one of them. But then there's these companies that are trying to recruit docs, and it's definitely here to stay.
It's here, absolutely.
How it evolves, it will be more and more interesting. And again, access to care, and the population health component of that too. It's just a smarter way to work, I think. I really do.
Yes.
Yeah. You guys hear that? It sounds like the landscaping guys are making a racket in my neighborhood right now.
I didn't hear a thing.
Okay, good.
I think it'll be especially because I've heard people on LinkedIn go, well, I need to be hands-on and do that. And I understand that, but I bring back and say, well, good golly, I think we've called the pediatric offices since I was a kid, or at least maybe not when I was a kid, but when my kids were young. And you get a nurse on the line and she'll order the, amoxicillin, and you pick it up, and it's all done without this. It just was done on the telephone. So there's certain specialties where I see it's, wound care is one, skilled nursing home care and helping patients without bringing them back and forth.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say to myself, man, I could see 30 people in really no time, or just looking at wounds or assessing wounds and coming up with a treatment plan, in a relatively short amount of time, versus physically going around, breaking down dressings, doing, all the photography, the application, all the things that are required.
I
I
think
like
one,
I like the fact that Courtney put it in one word. I'm going, you could go give a talk on that and just call your talk access.
Uh,
Now it can go a lot of ways,
yeah.
depending on insurance, access, but access that's a great word for that.
Yeah, and you think when you talk about access too, it's not physical mileage away, but even all the effort that it takes to get somebody into an office for a visit. It's not only up to the patient too, whether you have community transport or caregivers, support system of the patient. Family members have to take time off from work or juggle their own lives too to get that person in there. And then you look at something like wound care where it's, it requires regular visits too. It's a lot. It really is like, the cancer patients too. Their whole world is surrounded or revolves around, doctor's appointments. It's a lot. So anything to take some of that load off is really a smart thing.
I think possibly the greatest advantage that telemedicine offers, other than the fact that it allows easier access, particularly in times like this, is that it creates the opportunity, and I think not the necessity, but the realization that we should have years ago brought some structure to these things that we did over the telephone. Because when you were taking the telephone calls, it was something you kind of did on the fly, and maybe you were half listening, and maybe you were doing something else, and maybe you didn't quite give it the full attention that it needed. But this one thing, adding the video to it and agreeing that everybody is going to set aside some time to be in front of the screen at the same time, brings it to a level of organization where you actually make sure that you ask all the right questions, listen very carefully to the answers, and come up with some kind of a plan with accountability built into it, which is something that I think has been missing from the telephone calls in the past.
Access and listen. Those are the two key words.
Can I tell another quick story? I know you.
Oh yeah.
You're going to grow to love my stories. I got great stories. and I just thought of it. And when I said I didn't practice telemedicine, and here's a true story. Just happened not too long ago. My mother just turned 92 last month, and she has a left inguinal hernia that she claims happened when a certain general surgeon was born. was born. However, it had lay quiet until the last few years, and every now and again it brings her to the emergency room. It's incarcerated. They push it back in. She gets the NG2. Blah blah blah. Within the past year, I forget exactly when it was, might have been about 6 months ago, I got a distressed call from my sister because it appears mom's hernia is back out. And I said, well, let's do something I've never done before. I said, grab your cell phone and let's video call and let me see it. And of course it was the bulge and the groin. And I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. And we laid her down in her recliner and tipped her back and circular motion, gently push it back in. And I literally coached my sister through reducing an incarcerated inguinal hernia. Happened to be my mother's, happened to be the one I caused, supposedly. But as we sit here talking and I'm running through experiences that I could bring to the forum, how cool is that? So this could be anybody, anywhere, with any problem, such as an incarcerated hernia, that we've now kept out of the ER, kept out of the system, kept away from a humongous emergency room bill. She's Medicare is struggling. And so again, as we talk about access and impact, imagine if you've kept 10 people out of the ER in a month.
Right.
You've kept them away from exposure to COVID, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So not telemedicine, but an example of technology in that sort of mode, helping in many, many, many more ways than one.
You just made me wonder why our 911 calls aren't on video. With your iPhones, you've got the camera available no matter where you're at. So
That's true.
I've never thought about that before until you just told that story.
Let's not tell anybody. We might be onto something.
There you go. Courtney, that's a great story. That it's making me think. It's like, how the hardest part of all this, believe it or not, or at least to me, is going to be how do we capture stories like this, turn it into some type of data that we can then present to payers or government or whomever, and just show how effective this really is. Because in my opinion, telemedicine should have been green lighted a long time ago. Yeah. I was seeing the value of it in wound care. I would tell my patients all the time, please send me a picture or something. I'd have my patients using selfie sticks too. So if you can't reach down, you put it on there. I called it the healthy stick. And people never abused it either, but there were many instances where I was able to either write for an antibiotic or expedite care in some way. But the bottom line is it saved unnecessary trips to the emergency department. It relieved certain anxiety in the patient's mind too. Any number of things. There's so much positive with this, in my opinion. And I love that story with your mom too. It just, you coach them through it, and you save so much in the process.
Yeah, that's a great case. I mean, that's a perfect example of what we said. And I'm always saying to my own sisters-in-law, and my mother-in-law is 94, and I'll always say less is more. And I've told you guys this story. This is my last story. So, and I've told you, Courtney, you haven't heard this one. So, when you have the elderly like that, my mother was 92 or something, and my sisters called me and said, you're going to have to, when you come up here, you're going to have to tell mother she can't eat all this candy, because they'd called her a type 2 diabetic. Diagnosed at 91. Yeah, okay. So I walk in the door my next time into Ohio with a bag of Brock's butterscotch and a bag of Hershey Kisses. I put them on her bed and I say, nice to see you, Mom. And I look at my sisters and go, and that to me is what this allows you to do. I think you're right. I think especially in that age group, it could be a wonderful thing to allow them to be at home and get some care, and you might have a good nurse on site or whatever. But I just think it's going to run way to the benefit of patients.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hope
Absolutely.
I hope so.
Well,
Hope it meets the RVU scale.
I actually was just thinking, at the risk of having some groans, I'm surprised that wasn't the prompter for meeting the RVUs. is allowing telehealth. So.
Oh.
Great point. Listen, Courtney, I know you're on a bit of a schedule here, so we want to respect your time.
Yes, thank you.
Before we wrap up, do you have anything else you want to add? Anything you want to promote? Anything, words of wisdom or pearls for everybody here?
Who's the golfer in the group? Yeah, I know. Oh,
he's better.
I'm not even going to raise my hand.
No, it's too bad. So
yeah, it is too bad.
I think we got to get a golf group going someday.
Oh yeah,
I'll do that.
For that.
Well, you know what, Courtney, I just live up the road from you. I'm up in Ponte Vedra Beach.
Oh boy.
So you're a 2-hour drive from me, and I would love to connect anyway, because I definitely want to talk to you, and you guys too. More some of this wound care concept that on Randy's podcast. I was listening to that, and your points are well taken. This is the way wound care's got to go to, not just about telemedicine, but that team approach. Yeah. And so it's just always fun to bounce ideas off each other too, and you never know what's going to come out of it. But out on the golf course would be a great
A
place
lot
to
of
do
stuff
it.
happens.
Here's an important topic. You do know that they're moving. I saw that yesterday. I was watching that Tiger thing for Payne Stewart or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're moving the World Golf Hall of Fame to Branson from St.
Oh, wow.
Augustine.
What?
Are you making this up?
Nope.
Oh,
I didn't hear
Oh
it.
my!
They're going to move
Lord.
it to that, what was it called? Not Treetops.
Treetops is up in Michigan, I think.
No, that's Michigan. But the name of the resort where the great something lodge there, and the guy who owns it is the guy who owns all Cabela's and the outdoor stores.
Yeah.
And they've built all the resort, and they have the country, Western kind of music, Las Vegas music there and everything. So apparently they're going to move it there.
Wow.
You know what? Ironically enough, I just live again very close by the World Golf Village. There's been signs that they're just a lot of the restaurants and things that were there one time they've all pulled out of there, and so you wonder what's going on.
On my visits down there, I've been really surprised that there has never been a gigantic crowd, and I guess my assumption is that St. Augustine is just kind of not a place where people are flocking to.
Destination.
It's that's an interesting point already. We used to do conferences, and Jacksonville's not a place people want to come to for conferences. And I actually held one at the World Golf Village many years ago for the foundation for Sal. And it was tough getting people to come. If you fly into Jacksonville, it's a long drive down there.
Right.
St. Augustine's a wonderful place. It's beautiful. But even it sits, it's on 95. It's not even close to St. Augustine.
Well, I can tell you when Healogics when I was working with Healogics and doing the wound care course down there, every time I went, I didn't miss an opportunity to go down there and get a lesson from Ann Kane. So,
it's a fantastic place, and the courses are great. And I was going to play there last Sunday, and then it was raining. But I started golfing for therapy, and a few years ago. I had no desire to play, and a couple of my friends got me out there. We went up to Pinehurst, and I had such a good time. And then by about the third day, it was starting to come back. So, now it's just better than going to a psychiatrist, I guess.
Here's the last thing I'm going to tell you. So I just found this week, and I wrote my blog about it, but that's irrelevant. Go look up a guy named Fred Shoemaker, Shoemaker. And he wrote a letter called "To My Younger Self." Okay, it's my younger me, I guess it was. Dear younger me. But just look up Fred Shoemaker letter, and it's wonderful. It's about golf, but it's about life and stop, smell the roses kind of idea. You guys will all enjoy it. It's about it'll take you a minute and a half to read it. And I read it 2 days ago, and I go, wow, is that well written? I'm a golfer, but you'll like it. Fred Shoemaker, go read it.
Yeah, well, it's like there's a lot of lessons to be learned out on the athletic field for sure. And I think that's more than anything. It's not about winning and losing. You just learn so much more about others and yourself and how to, how it applies to life.
Well, that's what he's talking about. We all go out and grump and groan, play golf and pursue perfection that's non-achievable.
That's right.
And it's like my father said, well, if you were that good, you'd be Jack Nicklaus. So you're not. So get it.
Something that always got me about golf too. People can't wait to get out there. It's the focus of their week. Then once they're out there, it's like, hurry up.
Yeah.
Hurry up and finish. It's like, why? It's like, wait, you're supposed to savor the moment, enjoy it. Anyway.
Now you know who the golfers are, Courtney.
There you go.
There you go.
It's everybody.
We'll line that up. We all live in this part of the country, so we can line something up.
Excellent.
Well, guys, anybody else have anything else to add? Because we got to get Courtney out of here. I know he's got again.
Otherwise, you're going to
I can't resist the urge to remind everybody that he is a former guest on Prescription for Success. It's at the podcast site, rxforsuccesspodcast.com. And if I do say so myself, it was a great interview.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
I agree with that. It was excellent, and I enjoed it too. Despite Randy, it was great. No, it was really excellent. It was outstanding. You go, Randy, you always do a phenomenal job.
Fortunately, I talk less there than I do in the doctor's lounge.
Oh man, it's always fun. It's always fun. And that's what goes on inside the doctor's lounge. You never know where it's going to take you. I hope, for our audience, that you've enjoyed today's discussion. You just never know, again, where it's going to take us. And please, by all means, subscribe. That button you see on the screen there, please hit that, ring the bell, subscribe to Inside the Doctor's Lounge. We hope that you'll be here for future episodes. And by all means, add some of your ideas to what we're discussing. We welcome them. You may find yourself being a guest in the future. And it's just bottom line, it's always a lot of fun. So until next time, I'm your host, Dr. Desmond Bell, with my colleagues, Rhonda Crow, Randy Cook, Rick Zollinger, and again, our guest today, Courtney Chambers. You guys are the best. It's always a blast. And remember, for MD coaches, we see you, we believe in you, and we're here for you. Funny thing happened inside the doctor's lounge today. We began our discussion talking about telehealth and telemedicine and where this is all going. But in the process, the discussion turned down a whole different route. We covered everything from RVUs to golf to hernias, lots of great stories. We're really fortunate to have our guest today, Dr. Courtney Chambers. Dr. Chambers has an amazing background, and his story is certainly worth listening to. Definitely check him out. He did an interview earlier this year on RX, or Prescription for Success, with my colleague, Dr. Randy Cook. It's a great interview. But, just hearing somebody who has had such really an established career and being at a relatively young age got us into this topic today of where we all are and how telemedicine may be really an opportunity for another chance at medicine in a clinical sense. But anyway, we hope you enjoyed this discussion. It's always a lot of fun, and certainly, you can't make some of this stuff up. With that, I just wanted to remind you to please check out RX for Success, MD coaches, and really so fortunate to be able to do this every week with our colleagues, Rhonda Crow, who's the MD Coaches founder and CEO, Randy Cook, and Dr. Rick Zollinger, Dr. Z. It's always a blast. We hope you enjoy it. Please, again, sign up for our site here, hit that red button on your screen, and subscribe. And until then, until next time, I should say, I'm Dr. Desmond Bell for Inside the Doctor's Lounge. Take care.